Good afternoon. It was a surprisingly mild, bright, but blustery day. It is Thursday, the 23rd of November, and I'm sat here in the Read Nook with a nice hot cup of tea. And a box to continue unboxing. And what I'm going to pull out of here is this, which is Worlds of Dune, the places and cultures that inspired Frank Herbert. So some writers build worlds, some others birth entire universes. In the decades since its publication, Frank Herbert's Dune has become possibly the best-selling and certainly the best-known science fiction novel ever written. So how did the ex-Navy newspaperman from Washington State come to write such a world-conquering novel? And how was he able to pack it with so many layers of myth and meaning? Herbert's boundless imagination was sparked by a dizzying array of ideas from classical history to cutting-edge science, from environmentalism to Zen philosophy, and from Arabic text to Shakespeare's tragedies. Beginning on Arrakis and going planet by planet, the Worlds of Dune is a deep dive into Herbert's universe, detailing the diverse strands that he wove with his epic creation to offer a visually rich accompaniment to this timeless sci-fi classic. This then is talking about essentially some of the ideas and concepts behind Frank Herbert's Dune, regarded as, indeed, as it says, as one of the science fiction classics. And so when I was growing up, the sort of like the classics you kind of read when it came to science fiction were really, you would look at Isaac Asimov's Foundation series and iRobot stories. You would look at Arthur C. Clarke's Childhood's End, Rendezvous with Rama, and similar things, you know, whether it's from Robert Heinlein or you know, more recent authors like Larry Niven. But that was what was essentially readily available to me as a young science fiction reader. Some of it I would get off the shelf of my father's bookshelves. Some of it I would find in the bookstores at my local market. One of my favourite things to do on a Saturday morning was go to the market and just peruse through the science fiction book section of the bookseller. You know, the books placed sort of like that through the in flat boxes, and you could pick up a book to read for 10p. You know, I kind of still miss those days of being able to find a good second-hand science fiction or bookseller, and not, you know, pay through the odds like you do now. But anyway, enough of the nostalgia. So, Worlds of Dune. And I think this will be an interesting source book if you are also looking at you know, the role-playing game, or, you know, basically, or you're just a fan of the novels. So it is organised by world. So we have at Arrakis. What's that? Just trying to. Yeah, various worlds. So essentially, Arrakis, Gidi Prime, Cadan, and Cadan. Sorry, it's literally just not used to reading text down like that. So, you know, we have an introduction to Frank Herbert. You know, and then we have the famous, as the Bene Gesserit aphorism, you know, beginnings are such delicate times. And basically this introduction to Frank Herbert himself. And this book really is of course inspired, I suppose, obviously by the recent film from Denis Villeneuve, which to be fair, wouldn't if that hadn't appeared, it wouldn't have spurred all of this interest, and probably wouldn't have actually got this book published, because although Dune is well regarded within the science fiction community, outside of it, not so much. But it does here nicely also acknowledge the existence of the version made by David Lynch in 1984, which I saw when I was 17, and really loved, and I still actually really do like it. It's not a definitive version of Dune, but there's lots to like about it. There's also lots to go, oh my god. But the production values are amazing, and I would happily sit down and watch it if I could. Some of the performances are terrific. There's such a great cast to it. I mean, it's equally the more recent movie has a really good cast as well, although it hasn't. It has yet to show off all of the characters. So we move on to chapter 2. The Fremen. So we've looked at sort of like Arrakis as the world. I'm drawing from various scenes. So, for example, so this is a thrilling depiction of the Battle of Grimmery by Franz Robold, 1891. So again, it's sort of like that's used as an inspiration. You can see sort of like, the almost like the Fremen storming the fortifications there. And so on. And then we've got a whole chapter on the spice melange, or the substance which actually powers and underpins the known universe. And then part 2 is Cadan. And then we have seen from a bullfight, and bullfighting is part of the culture from Cadan. It's not immediately obvious in Dune itself. In any of the core 3 novels, in the original 3 novels, Dune, Dune Messiah, and God Emperor of Dune, it's because they're all really set on Arrakis. So, but it is, if you go into the prequel novels, it becomes much more important and part of just essentially that with members of the Arrakis, the House Atreides actually dying in the boring. So here we're talking about the inspiration for Paul Muad'Dib. And the various figures in history, which obviously Herbert would have been inspired by. So yeah, even drawing parallels with sort of Dances with Wolves, and then Indiana Jones' Temple of Doom, and then of course T.E. Lawrence. So drawing sort of like parallels between the interaction of the Western world and the Arabic world. And then connections between Lady Jessica and the Bene Gesserit. so on. And this draws from all the novels. So, for example, the Dark Side of the Magic Universe belongs to the Bene Gesserit, and we have a quote there from Chapter House Dune. And again, other inspirations. Aldous Huxley, Brave New World. And then we move on to the industrial hellhole that is Guided Prime and House Harkonnen. Man or myth, a Roman bust of the infamous Emperor Caligula. So there's an obvious inspiration for the figures from House Harkonnen as embodying madness and unbridled ambition. And again, we have a reference there to the 1984 version, David Lynch. That's Kevin McMillan, or Kenneth McMillan, I should say, and Malcolm McDowell in Caligula. A film I've actually never seen. My experience with Caligula storytelling is I, Claudius, the Robert Graves novels, and then of course the BBC television adaptation. And then we have also interesting parallels between sort of like the martial arts scene in Dune and a scene from the 60s television series The Green Hornet. But it's interesting to hear that sort of like one of the things that the 1984 film kind of didn't do well was the idea of the Weirding Way, which was essentially could be best described sort of like that using sound in the film does works visually, works as a story, but it's not what's happening really. That Duke Leto is actually training his troops in martial arts and special forces techniques that could be almost equal to that of the Empress Sardaukar. And you can see that in isolation in the scene in Denis Villeneuve's Dune there, in the fight between Duncan Idaho and the numerous troops sent after Paul and Jessica, and Duncan defends them. It's just one man against the forces of the Sardaukar, and he takes down several prior to his death. And then we move on to Peter de Vries and the Mentats. The idea of the man as machine, man as thinking machine, as opposed to thinking machines ruling man, and just some of the ideas and so on between those concepts. So yeah, another interesting thing to explore in this book. And then we move on to the Chome Corporation, essentially the how can I put it? The big economic holding company in the known universe. And here's the point: Chome is OPEC. It controls the economy of everything, whereas OPEC is just concentrated on oil. And there we have sort of essentially talking about monopolies and exploitations of one culture by another for economic purposes. And then we move on to Cadan, House Carino and the Padishah Emperor, and this is basically showing parallels between modern and past leaders and those of Dune, including obviously the Padishah Emperor in the films and the stories, and we see him enthroned there in his gold throne room part spaceship in the 1984 version. And then again, drawing distinctions and parallels with other figures from history. So yeah, and also the Landsraad, basically the political body which represented the noble houses, and including the actual World War example, the Greenland Landsraad, which I have not heard of, and the Mafia, of course. Now we have to Michael Corleone from the Godfather films, Spacing Guild, the great powers that provides travel and underpins the universe, as it were. And we have a fourth stage guild navigator, essentially interrogating the Emperor. That's how powerful they are in Lynch's 1984 version of the film. It's a fantastic scene and just shows you some of the power dynamics. And then we have sort of the planets themselves, and some of the visual elements are sort of like, here we're dealing with the artwork of Dawes, and Chris Foss for the spaceships. And then it's interesting thing as well is that the primary attraction of science fiction is that it helps us understand what it means to be human. And I've actually it's this interesting discussion I've actually had with friends, whereas they were talking about basically Jane Austen, and I was talking about Philip K. Dick. An interesting commentary there. Do you want absolute prediction? Then you want only today, and you reject tomorrow. Frank Herbert, Dune Genesis. I've not read Dune Genesis. It sounds an interesting book. And then he basically, that is the contradiction between those two, between the text and the images is fascinating. There, it's essentially the contrast, because of course, Asimov's Foundation series is all about that prediction. The power of psychohistory. And then lastly, the blog Dune World. So I think this will be a fascinating read, drawing sort of connections here between it and the depiction of Alien. I mean, and that kind of draws through, if you kind of look at that, you make the connection between that and some of the drawings you see for the Jodorowsky version of proposed version of Dune, and of course Alien there in those images. But yeah, I think if you're a Dune fan and you haven't got this book, I think it's going to be a fascinating book to read and enjoy. We've also got images here from the television series, done on a far lesser budget, but so it had to focus on other elements. And then we've got a classic cover to Dune, with the Fremen, the ornithopters, the spice collectors, or spice harvesters, I should say. And end notes. The classic covers. And the book I was referring to was essentially I meant earlier, was not God Emperor of Dune, it was Children of Dune, after Dune Messiah. You've got the classic covers there, which I well remember from the 70s, and so on. So yeah, that is The Worlds of Dune, The Places and Cultures That Inspired Frank Herbert. I think that's going to be a terrific read. Really look forward to digging into that. So if you're a fan of Dune as fiction, if you're a fan also of Dune, the role-playing game, the new version from Medieval Entertainment, I think you might want to have a look at this for some of the ideas, just to kind of underpin your role-playing and really just sort of like bringing concepts that aren't obviously obvious in the role-playing game as such, but they're under there as coming from the source material. So yeah, Worlds of Dune, it's an interesting read. So, hope you've enjoyed this unboxing in the Nook. If you have, then please do click on the like button down below. And of course, if you've got any comments or feedback, I do appreciate you taking the time to post those. And lastly, if you want to be alerted to get more unboxings in the Nook, where you will see me out here with a box containing a book or game, or in this case, a book about Dune, which I will unbox and talk about to the best extent of my knowledge for roughly 10 minutes or so, all of course accompanied by a nice hot cup of tea. Then do please click on the subscribe button down below. Thanks again for watching another unboxing in the Nook, and we'll be back again soon with another one. Bye for now.